Welcome back to the Scan Invitational. We had a slight technical hitch. All the players went into Champion Select and our TeamSpeak crashed. So we are already quite a way through picks and bans. You can see bans are actually fairly consistent to last games. The only addition is Shyvana in the bans, and Qunsk has taken away the Kazakhs from MYM.
Yeah, I mean, it took it was such a big issue in the last game. There was no reason really to keep that on the board, especially just to allow Eyes on You to take that away from them. But they have picked up the Kazakhs, so at least they're not going to have to deal with that. However, they are hovering over the Mundo, and I am on slight delay because I am casting over stream. So Stress will be doing his best to keep me up to date.
Oh, we have had the Yasuo locked in, and now this is one of the things as a caster that scares you, because this is the first game I'll have casted with Yasuo in the game, so it gives us some good talking points with Yasuo as the champion, but not very consistent with what we've casted before. Elise, on the other hand, who they've locked in alongside, very well seen champion. We all know about Elise.
Yeah, but most of what we talk about will be mostly speculation and opinions from our end, and no doubt we'll be flamed at some point for all of those being wrong. So, but yeah, that's why it's scary as a caster. But we are just waiting to see what Eyes on You do to fill in the rest of their blanks. And it's something they're probably thinking about right now. It took them a little while to kind of think exactly what they do want. It's like, whoa, it's Yasuo. That was banned out in the first game. Now we actually have to kind of adapt around that. We don't actually know where he's going to be because Elise being such an ambiguous pick could be mid lane, top lane, or jungle nowadays. But again, could be played in any one of those roles. And so is Yasuo, and no one really knows where he quite fits at the moment.
And you can see the bottom lane pairings on both sides have been picked up. Koi and Siscott going for that Annie Lucian again. They did have quite a good success in the very early game, picking up that early stun out in the jungle, but it kind of ended up backfiring and they never got themselves back to a point against the Zyra and Jinx, which has been locked in for MYM. These picks are coming through very quickly here, and you can see Zyra, Jinx, Nasus and Kale have been locked in against MYM. That's Eyes on You picking those two up. I'm wondering whether that's more specifically to go against Makler, against Yasuo, of course, which has been picked up by Makler. I would imagine that'll go to Czaru, though.
Yeah, indeed. And that's very interesting.
Maybe not, actually, because they've locked in Orianna as well, so we'll see where they end up swapping these around to. This is quite ambiguous on both sides. There's a lot of champions that can play more than one role. I mean, you look at Eyes on You, I would imagine that'll be Nasus top with Kazakhs in the jungle, but they're swapping things around quite a lot.
It's very, very funky. The way I would guess it is as Elise jungle, Yasuo top, then Orianna mid, then Kale mid, Kazakhs top, and then... Oh wait, no, Nasus. Ooh.
See, this is the thing, because they've swapped it around, and they have swapped it a number of times now. Yeah. I feel like Fears will be on Kazakhs in the jungle. It's a little bit more viable now because you get a little more gold from the jungle. So it is possible. It's not quite as risky as it used to be, where it had a lot of damage, but if you didn't get those early kills, you fell behind. It does somewhat still struggle from that, though.
Yeah, he has decent clear in the jungle, and as you said, there's more gold to kind of pull from in terms of item builds. But Nasa's top, do they have the team that can kind of work around that? Because Nasa's needs a little time to kind of set himself up, and if he doesn't have that, then there's no point running Nasus. And against a top lane, which is very likely to be Yasuo, could also be Elise if they decide to swap that up, and Elise is a very strong lane bully. Nasus doesn't really have too many counters, and I always like watching Nasus Stress.
You also always like playing Nasus.
I do.
It's a champion that if you ever get it, will lock it in. However, we do have to lock ourselves into a break for a couple. We're live with game number 2 here between Eyes on You and MYM in the Scan Invitational, powered by Sound Blaster, Netgear, and Be Quiet. This is, as I said, game number 2 here in the round of 8. Eyes on You look to play this one a little bit more defensively than they started out the first game.
Indeed, and this is a little funky. They're actually putting Koi forwards as like their tankiest member, and if they actually have the entire team jumping onto him, walks around the corner, Eyes on You are there, and they can just go for the ambush. But in fact, MYM just fanned out, and they're not going for the aggression.
Yeah, that's quite a big tell there, and this is such a strange game already. Like, I normally don't call things like team composition strange, but These are really obscure compositions to what we normally see. I mean, Kale has seen a little bit of a rise in play. Nasus has seen a decline in play, so it's kind of strange to see both at the same point with a Kha'Zix jungle.
Yeah.
And then there's the really, really question pick. We've not seen it before in this Yasuo in the top lane in a competitive game yet. So it's interesting to see where that's going to go and how Kubon is going to deal with a champion like Nasus in that top lane.
Yes, especially because a lot of the top lanes at the moment are just tanky balls of stats. You've got Mundo, you have Shyvana, and they just level up and then they kill your whole team. Yasuo is more damage focused and is unlikely we'll see more of like a full tank build from Yasuo. Some people are saying that a bruiser build is good. Some people are saying that the Straits of Infinity edge into static shift, because with the right runes and masteries you get basically 100% crit chance. So there's a couple builds that Yasuo can do here, and specifically against Nasus, because he's being picked up. We'll have to see how good he is against him in lane.
This time, however, you can see that without that level 1 engage, I would imagine Eyes on You would be a little bit more willing to trade here. They haven't yet got to that point. They got pushed in fairly hard there by Makler and Libik. So I'm expecting to see Qunsk and Sir Scott start to lay down a little more pressure. Hopefully they're not too afraid after the last game.
Yeah, and this time we haven't had the first blood. Qunsk has actually been locked up. Both of the brutes come down. Flash comes out as well. Makler with a follow. Last auto attack. First blood from the Ignite will be going down to that bottom lane.
And unfortunately, that wasn't quite the right time for Qunsk to move forward. The minion waves were a little bit stacked in an awkward position, so that's the problem, is you have good bursts and trading, but you have to pick your battles. You can't just go in randomly.
Oh, and the Wither has come down. Fear leaps forwards. The Flash has already been burnt by Kubon.
And that's a good pickup. It's not quite as good as Fears would like, with, of course, Kha'Zix kind of requiring a little bit more in the way of kills and assists to get that extra gold early on to allow him to scale. But a burnt Flash is a good play nonetheless. It's going to mean that Yasuo is fairly vulnerable as this game goes on.
Yep, Kha'Zix looking for round 2 onto Kubon. That's a large minion stack, however. Wither comes through, and the sweeping blade forwards. The third part of his Steel Tempest knocks them up. Windwall's not going to help you here, but Mokatte will. Fears jumps out. He's taking so much damage from the minion line. Kubon will also be taken down as Koi tries to escape from the spider, and he will just be throwing down the Wither once again, juking through the minions. Another Cocoon actually finds its way through the minions as well. Mokatte jumps forwards. The spiderlings will dash forwards as well. That's not quite enough to pick up the second kill.
Oh, Mokatte's explosive spiderling didn't quite get through the minions like the Cocoon threaded the needle. Sir Scott is under a lot of danger in that bottom lane. Qunsk gets tied up again.
Yeah, and because there's no Sir Scott to output the damage as he retreats, that's a perfect chance to capitalize on his positioning. And again, they're just being completely punted around in the bottom lane.
And up in that top lane engagement, the kill went over to Nasus, and yes, he did get the Siphoning Strike to get the kill, so he gets a nice set of stacks onto that Q. But they really would have liked to get that on Kha'Zix, but they're looking for that kill in the bottom lane.
Yeah, Makler has been locked up. Fierce comes in from the side, doesn't quite land the spikes, but juking back into the bush. Qunsk will be the one to pick up that kill.
And Fears was actually winding up for the auto attack. The problem was Sir Scott was about to get killed there by Makler. So again, the kill doesn't quite go to Fears. He is picking up gold from the assists, however. Just depends on whether that's going to be enough to allow him to scale. But Eyes have to keep this pressure up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the top lane as well, and we spoke about that first kill going onto Nasus, which is because of how the lane is going, and even though he's behind the farm, but he will catch up now, it's very important for Nasus to have a good early game. You kind of get past this threshold point where Nasus has a weak early game, and then he just 1v1s you, 2v1s you, and then 3v1s you, and then you lose the game. So we have to kind of see him constantly being pushed out by Kubon right here, and it looks like Yasuo as a pick does very well just typically in that 1 versus 1 matchup.
Yeah, in this early game, Koi's going to take quite a bit of damage from Kubon. You can see he's picked up a Chain Vest already. You touched on it earlier about the different builds that you can have on Yasuo. Now, Vlamatak, the analyst for Team Dignitas, has worked with quite a few teams as well. actually tweeted Skara a while back saying if you build as a bruiser on Yasuo, he's actually fairly viable. You build Trinity Force into a lot more tanky items and see where that takes you. It means you can output quite a bit of damage, take a lot in response as well. Kubon's gone double Doran, so no indication yet of where he's going, but I'm wondering how that'll do up against a Nasus here, who is inherently going to stack armor and survive a lot with his ultimate.
Yeah, indeed. He's going to need some form of penetration, so he'll look for the Last Whisper, but you won't be getting that until a little bit later with the Bruiser build, because once you go for the Trinity Force, you're kind of locked into going for a tanky item after that. Otherwise, you're just not going to be tanky enough to survive, and there's no point trying to go for that build anyway. So it's a little different because of how the picks have gone so far. We're going to see the Stealth Dragon picked up here by Mokatte as long as he doesn't die. Might have to see Czaru try to tank this for a second. In fact, won't be an issue as the smite comes out.
Yeah, Elise is very good at taking those early dragons with that extra little bit of help from Czaru, just providing the shield every now and then allows him to take that one down. And that's a good pickup there for MYM. The gold is fairly close. It's only really that dragon that separates the two. As 2 kills to 2 here is the standing.
Yeah, it's a very strange game in the sense that both of these players and indeed teams scale very similarly. There's no real difference as we progress into the mid game or indeed late game. Yasuo, or if he goes for a different type of build, Scott gets locked up in the bottom lane, and the Zat actually gets blocked by an minion. Qunsk in return will be throwing down the stun, but nothing quite happening yet as both of the lanes have dropped fairly low, mainly Scott as he just actually picks up the pot.
The big question here is how many stacks can Koi get and how tanky can he get at the same time, because Nasus is one of those champions that the later you get into the game, the more powerful he's just going to become, the more defensive items he gets. Ooh, Makler might be in a little bit of trouble here, but he does have quite a good amount of movement speed. The more Nasus gets in this game, the more difficult the late game, I feel, is going to be for MYM. Champions like Jinx are going to scale okay. Elise is going to be able to output quite a bit of damage in the late game, but I don't know whether they've got enough damage to really take Nasus out of the board before he can start doing critical damage.
Yeah, you'll eventually hit critical mass with Nasus as well, so it's about trying to either shut him down before he hits that stage, or getting someone on your team who can deal with him, and as you've mentioned, there's very little they can do about that. Yasuo is not going to really answer, because he's just going to wither him, so it's going to have to come for Elise, who is the jungler, and you don't necessarily want to be stacking the damage there, especially when you have a more damage-orientated top lane. You don't want the jungler to be damage-orientated, otherwise you don't have a real tanky champion on your team, and Orianna won't instantly nuke down Nasus either.
Yeah, no, it looks like Nasus is going to build a fairly standard Frozen Heart here, which is going to slow down Makler. So even though he's got that passive, which is going to give him the extra attack speed, when he's around Nasus with that Frozen Heart, he's going to output less damage because of that reduced attack speed from the Frozen Heart. So it's just going to be a little bit difficult for MYM with so much AD to really chunk through that Nasus when he gets more shield, when he gets more armor.
Yeah, and it's very tempting to go for a pick like the Iceborne Gauntlet, as I just put that thought on hold as Tibbets has come down. Makler gets deleted, and now Mokatte didn't really want to be jumping in here. Tibbets definitely gets stunned by the cocoon, and they will just have to move themselves back to turret.
And that's a really nice start here for Kha'Zix. Finally gets that kill, but those 2 assists earlier allowed him to pick up the double longsword, so building towards that Spirit of the Lizard Elder to just really clear that jungle, really get as much damage as possible during these early team fights where it's oh so important for the Kha'Zix to start scaling well. There's no dragon available. You could see Kale did come down because they didn't quite spot that MYM had done it earlier, but it is due up in just over 2 minutes, I believe, so not too long until that global objective is available once again.
Yeah, and Eyes on You have some very big threats, and big threats that can snowball out of control very quickly, looking at the Nasus, looking at fears on Kha'Zix, and to keep those people alive, PowerOfEvil's got the intervention. So if there is a big threat, they won't be able to immediately deal with it in a team fight, which is very scary considering their composition kind of, it's not necessarily all about burst, but it has a lot of burst in their team. They have a little bit of control in there as well as Czaru jumps onto PowerOfEvil's got Mokatte for the backup, and the cleanse already comes out. Intervention comes forward, just using it for the damage peel, jumps up with repel. Is it going to be enough to take down PowerOfEvil in time? He actually opts to go back to his turret, but now Koi on the scene. He is so unbelievably tanky, just walks past the first turret and the second to pick up the second and convert Orianna into Q stacks.
And just diving as soon as possible. Meanwhile, he does get taken down by Makler, so playing a little bit too aggressive there was Koi. 2-1 though will give him a good amount of gold here, and I'm just wondering how Yasuo is going to be able to deal with that as this game goes on. You can see he's already bought that Avarice blade to go towards Static Shiv, so it depends how many of these plays Koi is going to attempt to make here. The teleport is now not available, so I just wonder exactly how this game is going to go. It's just such a question having Yasuo here.
Yeah, and Nasus is going to play like a selfish game until he's got teleport, and then play a selfish game again where he just split pushes and farms up. But Yasuo being so far ahead in gold is going to help him, and plus in farm. So Avarice Blade is kind of a tell here, Stress. We know he's going to at least go for the Static Shiv and most likely the Infinity Edge. So it's not going to be the Bruiser-ish build here. And that means that the jungler may build a little more damage. Might just typically go for the spell penetration build, which you most likely see into tank. It's just a question of how useful is Kubon going to be when you have Wither.
Yeah, of course that's going to slow him down as well on top of the Frozen Heart. Although he's not looking like he's going for Frozen Heart. That sheen kind of indicates to me like he's going to go Iceborne Gauntlet rather than the attack speed reduction.
Yeah, so I was starting to point off earlier, and I might have to end it again very quickly as we have Elise in the top lane looking for this gank to happen, as Nasus is going to try and get these Q stacks, but there's a large mini wave to contend with. Not going to be a massive issue. I'm going to keep my eye on the top lane as they do actually go for this, and the last breath comes forwards, lands the Neurotoxin, looking for the cocoon, which will indeed land, following up with the Venomous Bite.
Yeah, it just looked like Fury the Sands wasn't quite used in time, of course getting tied up by that last breath, and the Steel Tempest there out of Yasuo. There's a lot of crowd control there. Like an insane amount if you land that whirlwind from it. And I don't think Koi was expecting it.
Yeah, indeed, and we're not going to see anything quite at the bottom lane. We just saw a love tap by Qunsk, but the Iceborne Gauntlet is something that is a little questionable to me for a Nasus player, because you don't need the damage. You just don't need any damage whatsoever. Frozen Heart gives you more tankiness, allows you to farm up with the mana, and also you get the extra cooldown reduction, whereas Iceborne Gauntlet, yes, it gives you a little more damage, but you're going to get that naturally from those Q stacks. Mokatte, with the rest of the team, picking up the dragon with no real contestant from the team of Eyes on You, so I'm not sure I like that pickup from Nasus right here.
Yeah, normally you'll pick up a Sheen item later. Typically Trinity Force is the one you go for, just because it adds that little extra damage. Flash comes out from Qunsk.
Yeah, Tib is onto two. Mokatte jumps up. He's got nowhere really to move to. Culling does not quite take down Libik. Will clip him off as he walks into the side, but this looks like it's going to be the blue buff for Eyes on You.
We saw this earlier, that MYM picked up the dragon and will be happy to trade that. Shockwave comes out trying to get the blue. They pick it up with the ultimate from Makler, who looks to chase, but I don't think he'll get too much.
Yeah, Super Mega Death Rocket comes in from the side. Nice snipe onto Fears. So while they do not take... Wait, who ended up with the blue buff? It was actually going to be Makler with the snipe onto Fears.
Oh, really? Oh, that's... Yeah, of course. Makler did end up picking that one up.
Perfect. Perfect scenario. So right now 6-5 and a slight advantage to MYM, which is exactly what they need. They need to be ahead of the game curve if they're going to deal with these big threats on the board. So we'll see how this works out as we head into the middle game.
And one of the points here about the difference in team compositions is really Eyes don't have the greatest objective control until they can get Koi into the fights. That's really when they can start taking objectives very quickly, whereas you look at MYM, they're able to get those two dragons because of the way their lanes have been pushing. Yes, Fears should have good isolation damage onto objectives like Dragon, but when they don't have the map position for it, it's very difficult, and it's engaged in the bot lane.
Yeah, Stronger Funds comes up, doesn't quite connect onto anyone. Makler jumps forward. He does have the double buff from the earlier snipe. Libik drops very low, and the Light Slinger passive will be enough to knock him down.
Yeah, that's, as I was saying, it's just difficult for Eyes to start pushing their lanes out because of the team composition out of MYM, so they're not really able to contend these objectives too well, and there's big damage out of Czaru in that middle lane already. It's actually built a Haunting, guys, which is not common for an Orianna. That's
a little interesting. It kind of shows me that they're looking for a more poke-centric game, but typically you don't pick up a Haunting Guise because you don't have fantastic base damages compared to a lot of mid laners. You scale very well, you're more for the utility on top of your damage, but you'll often go for a Haunting Guise on someone like Elise because your base damages in forms of the percent damage is so good.
I'm still I'm scratching my head on that. It looks like we're going to get an Archangel's Scepter with that Haunting Guise out of Orianna, but it's a very different build to the standard Athene's Unholy Grail. Makler might be caught out here in this bottom lane. The culling has been used, but that's the problem with the culling. That minion wave travels into the lane just at the right time to save Makler.
Yeah, so we're going to have to see how this build works out. Of course, Czaru is a fantastic mid lane player, especially an Orianna player, so he knows exactly what he's doing. Players usually have a reason for doing something. We'll just see how it works out as we transition into the mid and late game.
Now, Nasus is trying to catch up in the farm, but it's just one of those difficult situations where Mokatte is really spending quite a bit of time up with Kubon here. They've already dived onto Koi once already. Can they manage to get it again? And until Koi gets really tanky, he's just going to get to a point where there's going to be too much crowd control out of MYM to lock down Koi in the fights. I mean, Grasping Roots coming out is going to hold him in place and will take a lot of damage from that penetration build that we've seen from Czaru, of course, one of the sources of AP damage, which is going to affect Nasus a little bit more easily. He does have that Negatron Cloak building towards a Spirit Visage, but if he gets locked down, until he gets to a point where he's got 3 complete items, he's not going to get through to the backline to really deal the damage that he needs to.
Yeah, that's Nasus's biggest problem. He is very easily kited. It's kind of the Udyr principle, but his strength comes from split pushing, and as long as he's strong enough, then one-on-one against anyone else on the team of MYM, that's always going to be an issue. Plus, he's got the teleport, so he can always teleport into a team fight, and that's 1 versus 1 going to be very difficult. Stranglethorns comes up, and the Relentless Pursuit. Super Mega Death Rocket will be blocked by the barrier. Libik gets completely melted by Koi as he gets another Q stack. Mokatte jumps forward, picks up the kill with Venomous Bite, but maybe taken down by Koi. In the meanwhile, Makler moving forward, fallback pings comes down as Kubon comes in from all the way from the top lane and doesn't quite connect to that Koi in time.
Yeah, can't quite get into the lane in time, but that's the kind of team fight that Eyes on You will really like. Koi didn't have any trouble getting to the backline because his teleport went to the backline, and Kubon goes diving into the fight. Just looked like he managed to get the recall just in time.
Yeah, he had the last second. Last breath comes down as well. Makler trying to get in range for the damage. Kubon jumps out using his E, and the wind wall in a very odd position. Qunsk flashes through it, however, and the zap comes across. It's not going to be enough. There is no bleed on him. Koi has been interventioned up, and the Spirit Fire comes down for the kill.
And this is one of the things about seeing Yasuo in these games. The wind wall was to block the minion damage that was coming through from the lane just to make sure that they couldn't chase. I'm not sure how effective it was in the end because he ended up dying because he just couldn't avoid the damage after all. But it's one of those tricky things about Yasuo that is just not quite known yet.
Yeah, and also for anyone wondering, I saw a couple questions in chat. That is 267 stacks on to Nasus, but Libik is just trying to push them away from the dragon at the moment. Will be spawning in 10 seconds. That contention point. Mokatte found himself in the jungle up against Fears, who one-on-one should win at this stage in the game. Libik being very aggressive on Zyra. Spirit Fire across the wall, and the dash through from Sir Scott trying to get that vision. Calling comes through, will tag him, will be enough to pick up the kill. Koi has got his ultimate once again. Kubon is not in the place he wants to be. Knocks him up. Last breath comes down. Perfect time on the intervention, but will be dropping the Nasus with Charu's ultimate. Lots has been expended already, and Qunsk gets out zapped. Doesn't even connect. 2-for-1 trade, and the dragon is up.
But again, MYM are picking these fights right when they feel like they can get dragon. That's massive damage onto Qunsk. They stack for the Tibbers. The shutdown goes on for Czaru. Will MYM be able to secure this position here for the dragon?
They had the numbers advantage, and they had the most perfect money Tibbers in the world, but they had no mana to do anything about it, so that will be the dragon falling to Meet Your Makers.
And Meet Your Makers take their 3rd dragon of the game. Pretty much every time it's up, MYM are getting that objective. Fears is very low. That's to be careful that he doesn't take too much damage. We'll have the isolated golem and be able to recall out of that.
Yeah, it's always great when you see these top level players go into a battle to the death with the camps in the jungle, who are a little bit stronger in the season for jungle. So do you see Libik being very aggressive on that Czaru, as we usually see him being, as we saw the very aggressive flash into the Ignite, trying to pick up the kill into Fears earlier. Sir Scott, meanwhile, has been melted by Makler. That's probably a very dead bottom turret, but we do see a reaction from Fears.
And that's one of the problems when Makler is 3-3 with 2 finished items already. He's just able to output a little bit more damage than Lucian, because no finished Trinity Force yet for Lucian just means that his damage isn't going to be all that great on his abilities. Really, it's the culling that is going to deal massive damage, but Fierce gets locked up.
Strangleforms comes down, and the last auto attack from Mr. Fishbones will pick up that kill.
And they will be able to push this turret in as well. They've got the cannon wave joining them. Turret is around about half health, but you can see already Makler able to do a lot of damage with that increased attack speed. And that's a turret in favor of MYM, and that's all 3 outer turrets that have gone down. Their objective control in this game is far better than Eyes on You, and you can see the effect that it's having on the gold.
Yeah, and if Eyes on You, however, are at their turret before MYM reach that area, then they have very good wave clear. They've got the Nasus with the Spirit Fire, and also a bit from Fears, but also KO the AoE damage from Righteous Fury is enough usually just to take down the minion wave. They have to be somewhat close to it, but it's not a big deal, especially when they have the 5-man stack. So it's all about MYM trying to outmaneuver Eyes on You as we transition into the mid and late game, trying to find themselves Fears as well. Cocoon will not land, and Nasus reacting from the top lane means they really don't want to go any further.
And very similarly to game number 1, we're seeing that Libik has decided not to go for that Talisman of Ascension again. And again, it's a departure from what we've seen on a lot of supports recently, but seems to be working out fairly well for Libik. They're able to catch people very well and get a lot of wards down, which is giving them good objective control. And really, that's the basis of how they've been able to establish these towers and dragons, because they know exactly where Eyes on You are.
Yeah, and now we do see the rotation from MYM, and Orianna does not want to get caught out here, but does have the ward in the jungle, so it's not going to be too much of an issue. Kubon just tanking up some of this damage, or I should say Makler, maybe not the right person, as they just clear out the golems and look for the next siege. But the entire rotation comes in from Eyes on You. Might be a little difficult to try and siege this turret, and the culling will be used for good measure.
Yeah, they've got decent wave clear. The wind wall didn't quite go down in time. Shockwave is going to be used, only hits Qunsk. And here comes the counter engage with the teleport.
Yeah, Nasus coming in, does land the dissonance right on time. Strangleforms comes up for the disengage. A command at just kind of skirmishing at the moment before they go for the full-on engage. Kubon has returned, and the rest of the team from Eyes on You are very low.
And typically with that Stranglethorn's disengage, you just are able to zone out so much. You can see it actually filled the entire lane width there for MYM. And now they're looking to push forward. I don't think they'll be able to get an inhibitor turret. That's a big ask this early on. But they've got good warding so that they can watch for any flanks from Eyes on You.
Yeah, flash forward from PowerOfEvil does land the Reckoning, and Makler has been tagged by Wither as well. And the money tip is onto 2. Libik will fall, so will the AD carry of Jinx. 2 for 0 trade in a blink of an eye.
And that's the problem with not having Talisman of Ascension, is when you're trying to disengage without Stranglethorns, you have no boost of movement speed. You're really relying on Dissonance to give your whole team as much movement speed as possible, and that's not a very big area at all. So MYM a little bit punished there by the itemization on supports.
Yeah, indeed, and the middle lane, Kubon just being pushed around, and this is the counter push coming in from Eyes on You. Very easy decision, and they're probably going to pick up the middle turret as well, as Fizz finds himself Kubon and will be tanking up the middle turret. But 14 to 10, we are seeing gold flying back in the direction of Eyes.
Yeah, Eyes do pick themselves up 2 towers, and that will bring the gold a little bit closer, as he said, about 2,000 between the 2 teams. Dragon will be up in a minute, so I would expect to see MYM make sure their lanes are all shoving. Top lane is already pushing out for them, but their wards have started to expire. They need to re-establish that just to make sure that Eyes on You can't get their eyes on the dragon.
And we do see the tier map picked up by Kha'Zix, so they're going to have even more wave clear and also the assassin type build that we do sometimes see from those jungle Kha'Zixes. But the red buff is under contention by both of these teams, and MYM will be the ones to try and drag that towards themselves. Repel comes up for the vision, and also the ball coming forwards as well. Doesn't look like Eyes are going to be able to take this one.
Yeah, they're just not able to contest. The vision control is too good for MYM. Yes, there are wards out for Eyes on You. You can see Kubon will go aggressive onto PowerOfEvil, but he has got a crazy amount of damage for himself.
Intervention has been used. He's going to sacrifice himself, knowing he couldn't retreat from that. And Fear's forced to jump on out, also using it as an ultimate. So, several ultimates used and a 1-for-1 trade, MYM are going to again convert this into another objective.
Yeah, and you might wonder why they decided to try and use abilities such as Shockwave on Fears, but they knew Dragon was coming up, they've had the timer on it the entire time, and 10 seconds later they've already taken the Dragon down. So the ultimate from Czaru, which is going to be available again in exchange for the Dragon, is a good trade, but Eyes on You look to rotate around to Baron, but I really don't think they have enough damage yet, even with Koi there, to be even contemplating Baron.
Yeah, they only scratched it. They were hoping with the Nasus ultimate, which destroys Baron, that they were able to take it while they transitioned to Dragon, but they didn't quite not only go there fast enough, but they wouldn't have had the damage even if they had made the snap decision. So again, they're just going to have to back on if MYM weren't able to instantly take it themselves, so not a big deal.
You can see there's a really nice play by Libik, knowing where the wards were. Took out one, and with the aura still from the red trinket, managed to move around to the side, pick up another. So really getting good value out of that one cooldown there off the red trinket. So shows you the level that these players are just going to be inside each other's heads, knowing exactly where they're warding. Eyes on You have established control around that Baron, so it means that MYM can't really sneak it. They do have good damage to go against a Baron, but it's just not going to be quick enough for Eyes on You to be able to answer that, especially not when Teleport becomes available on Nasus in a couple of seconds. I believe we're about 30 seconds away from that being available.
Yeah, just by having the Nasus with the teleport off the cooldown means he can go into another lane, and that just tells MYM that he has the teleport available, so you can do some mind games there. But more importantly, it means they can't just jump onto the Baron, because he'll teleport in, and Nasus with ultimate on will just make it very difficult to stay inside of that pit if they lock themselves in there. And in fact, they're not even sending Nasus to do that, they're just going to try and do the classic Baron dance.
Now, looking at Yasuo, we discussed earlier the difference in build. He's actually building for that 100% crit chance, which is fairly easy to achieve on Yasuo. I remember having a conversation with a couple of the UK's top and mid laners about the crit percentage when you get a couple of items, but here comes the fight.
Oh, the collapse comes in, the shockwave comes out, and also the last breath, but instantly Mokatte will be nuked down, but that's a Nasus release. They'll take that cut. It's a perfect Timid, but the rest of the team are on the defensive. Flash backwards by Sir Scott, one more to attack, will pick up that kill from Makler. Get excited, it's cleanup time for the team of MYM. Fears will be dropping off to the side. Zap comes through, will actually land. Mokatte does not go any further, but PowerOfEvil takes the opportunity to jump onto the rest of that team. Makler getting that extra get excited movement speed will try and move towards Fears. He picks up the kill with Zap. He had the vision using the wood, and Czaru pushes down the middle lane. The ace comes in for MYM.
Brilliant ward out of Libik earlier to make sure that they had vision. That's an obscure ward to pick up a kill, but very nice nonetheless. They will rotate backwards. They may even feel like they can take an objective from this, but with the members of Eyes on You respawning, it's not going to be the Baron because of that teleport being available. But that was a really good team fight out of MYM. You could see the eyes stacked. Ooh, MYM actually are going to attempt the Baron. That damage is actually insane already. I really didn't think without a tank or anything like that they would be able to take damage, but you can see the damage from that critical strike chance from Yasuo is just shredding through Baron.
Well, that sure is 2 AD carries, and it turns out that drops a single target very quickly. So, yeah. So as a side effect of having Yasuo, you have a very good team for taking Baron, even without a Lee's. So the amount of objective control, not only on the towers, but also on Dragon and Baron, is something that Yasuo might be useful.
And very interesting to go up against a team, or at least a champion like Nasus, who is going to build armor as resistance. You can see Jinx has foregone any kind of penetration just to get that extra critical. So it means that MYM are going to be critting so often that they're relying on having less penetration to actually chunk through the armor because of how behind they put Nasus with those early kills. He's not quite at the point where he'd like to be 30 minutes into the game. Let's have a look at how many stacks Koi actually has right now. It's 444, so he'll do quite a bit of damage, but it's not really going to be enough because he's not going to be able to get to the backline.
Yeah, I mean, 450 stacks at this stage in the game is actually pretty good, and that wards at this stage in the game is not very good. Kubon does find himself caught by Fierce, however, Windwall not going to save him. He comes through, he jukes backwards. Makler has finally come and found himself in the top lane. He's actually chunking through Koi, and now with the weather coming down, Fierce dashes forwards. Libik has also joined, and drips and drabs. MYM find their entire line in the top lane. Super Mega Death Rocket comes through. Fierce is probably not going to escape from this one.
Mokatte will pick that one up, and you can see during that fight, Makler had actually picked up the last Whisper, was just waiting to recall, had the gold for that, so did have the penetration to make it even quicker that they chunked through Nasus and Kha'Zix, but now MYM are in full control of this game once again. They've had great objective control all game, and they know that Dragon is coming up in just over 40 seconds, so they're looking to just shove as many of their lanes. They have to be careful though, because Sir Scott is in that bottom lane pushing through a turret. However, if they can get a good trade here, they'll be able to pick up more.
Yeah, they can instantly delete the Power of Evil. That will also be very good as well. Still has that intervention off of cooldown, so have that when he actually gets up again. But Kubon on the hunt, trying to pick up that Lucian as the rest of his team just batters down the front door. And Kubon has caught up, and in 1 second will instantly delete his target.
And that's an inhibitor going down for MYM, and they just don't feel like they're under any pressure here from Eyes on You. You can see PowerOfEvil drifted forward and just got caught once again. And MYM are very smart at using their ultimates. Yes, they may be using them only to kill one person, which normally for Shockwave isn't that good, because you expect a big Shockwave in team fights, but every time they use it, they're getting big objectives off it. They're getting dragons, they're getting inhibitors and turrets just from using Shockwave.
Yeah, they know their composition well enough to be able to do that, and Fierce has again found himself caught. Leap comes up, knocks him up in mid-air, will be taken down by the distance from Czaru, and that's another pick, and all they need is one kill, exactly why they're utilizing the Shockwave for those objectives.
Really nice cocoon there as well from Mokatte. Managed to pick him up during that jump, and now MYM rotate around. They will look for this bottom tower, and I have to think that they'll be able to get it, but Eyes will start to contest when Super Mega Death Rocket doesn't quite hit anything, but with the minion wave, there's the
magic. The most money of Shockwaves comes through. Everyone drops onto 5% HP. Pushed forward from Mokatte, picks up one. Locked underneath the turret with Annie's last breath. That's not going to be Yasuo using that. But Koi has already moved into the bottom lane. 3 versus 1. He's being kited around. So that's got us come back from base. But 1 versus 3, that's not the place he wants to be. Culling is coming through. Just tagging Czaru. Inhibitor will drop.
That's a second inhibitor now for MYM, and every time they take an engagement, they are getting big objectives from it. Fears is looking to get in range here to jump, because Czaru's low enough. Dissonance comes out. He actually gets held in place there as Czaru will Zhonya's.
Yep, Koi comes in for the flank. Now 1 versus 3 again. Spiritfire will pick up 1. Czaru trying to just survive through this, and Libik will be the sacrificial lamb, just allowing Czaru to escape.
But look at the base. There's already supers from that top lane taking down the first Nexus turret, and it's only Qunsk that's there to hold it. They're forcing the recalls out. There's going to be a fair amount of damage onto this second Nexus tower.
Yeah, indeed. And, well, they are being pushed into their base. Baron's not going to be up for a little while, so they do have that breathing room, and they'll be able to farm those waves as they are now onto the defensive. So that's a little bit of side effect with the pace of the game. But now 22-23, the game's still very even, but now looking at the goal totals, 7 objectives in form of those turrets over that team of Eyes on You. MYM are in a very solid position, especially if they pick up the kill into PowerOfEvil. Just expecting more people to be there, I suppose, with that 2 versus 2 in the middle lane.
PowerOfEvil is very strong though. He's got that Lichbane, has had it for a while, with the Seekers and the Nash's Tooth as well. Is really just chunking through anyone that he focuses, so MYM do have to be a little bit careful. But as soon as that intervention is gone, that's really when they can strike and pick up as many kills as they'd like to, because MYM have a really good composition for just snowballing these fights through.
Yeah, and Nasus has indeed picked up the Frozen Heart and the Trinity Force, which is what we were talking about earlier, so I guess he was just using the early Sheen for a bit of extra damage, but I'm glad our call was right. Always nice as a caster.
Yeah, that is quite nice. A little bit surprising that you pick up Sheen so early before the stacks, but who knows? Maybe it's a playstyle choice out of Koi. Of course, every player plays champions a little bit different, so not really anything to take away from a player on that one.
Yeah, we're probably going to see another armor item from Koi as well, because they have a lot of penetration from MYM Kappa.
No, that's Super Team EU Kappa, who play later today in our third game of the day.
Move.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see a Guardian Angel of all things actually come out for Nasus, as they really need survivability. Shockwave goes on.
And that is not survivability. Both of those members dropping in an instant. The support and the jungler. Koi has been hit by Zap. Super Mega Draft Rocket will be juked by Koi. But 5-man stack against 3 at this stage is not going to keep their inhibitor alive. We'll see if they can go any further. But most likely it's going to be the clean sweep from those inhibitors. And we'll see if they can go for the finish.
They do have Koi and PowerOfEvil to contend with here, as well as Sir Scott's. They have to be careful that they don't take fights that they really can't win. There's the intervention that's been used from PowerOfEvil, so that's going to signal the engage from MYM.
Scott has already dropped. Koi moving forwards. 1 Q stack will instantly delete several of these players. But another flash forward from PowerOfEvil, not quite enough to take down Makler. Still has that Zhonya's available to him. Koi will be the next one to fall. Qunsk has finally respawned with the Nexus has been exposed. Czaru has indeed used his own Zhonya's, and this will be the 1 versus 1 trade. Meanwhile, Makler, will he finally fall? Yes, he will. Ignite will be enough to take him down. Now the jump out from Fears doesn't quite get the reset from the shield. From Command Protect, he gets the 1 reset, has been locked up by Mokatte, will not kill him, and that's the 5-man ace, and the Nexus falling 2-0 for MYM.
That's very good play out of MYM here, and they looks like they started to warm that one up right through that series. Of course, they do have the LCS promotion qualifiers coming later today, as that's going to be a very important series for them, but we have a very important series coming up next, because our next series is a very highly anticipated set of teams. Cloud9 have picked up a European team, and